Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Jasatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we're going to hear about Govardhan and Krishna. In the Krishna book, 10th Canto, Part 2, it says, in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna crushes the pride of Indra by prohibiting a sacrifice intended for him and initiating a substitute sacrifice in worship of Govardhana Hill. When Shri Krishna saw the cowherd men busily preparing for a sacrifice to Indra, he inquired about it from their king, Nanda. Nanda explained that the rain given by Indra enables all living entities to maintain their lives, and therefore this sacrifice would be executed to satisfy him. Krishna responded, it is because of karma alone that living entities take their birth in a certain body, experience varieties of happiness and suffering in that body, and then give it up as the karma pertaining to it runs out. Thus, it is karma alone that is our enemy. Our friend, our guru, and our Lord, and Indra can do nothing to alter the happiness and distress of anyone, for everyone is tightly bound by his karmic reactions. The material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, being about the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this world, the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance bring about the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this world. The clouds give forth rain when they are impelled by the mode of passion, and the cowherds prosper by protecting the cows. Furthermore, the cowherd's proper residence is in the forest and on the hills. Therefore, you should offer worship to the cows, the brahmanas, and Govardhana hill. So here's an example of how Krishna uses the atheistic karma mimamsa philosophy to try and convince his father not to worship Lord Indra, but to worship Govardhan hill. And this is like shocking. How can he use a materialistic philosophy? Well, Krishna is the source of all intelligence and knowledge. So therefore, if he gives the materialists the intelligence to think up a false philosophy, he has the intelligence to use the false philosophy for a good purpose. So basically that's what he's doing. And whatever he's saying, although it sounds like he's espousing false philosophy, actually what he's saying is true in relation to the devas, not to himself. The law of karma is controlled by Krishna himself. So when he says that everyone in the material world is bound and by the laws of karma, even the demigods, that's true. However, Krishna is not. And this is what baffles people. In fact, Krishna goes to great length to convince the devotees, or Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita about this. In the 3rd chapter, he says, Nami partasti kartavyam trisu lokesu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva chakarmani. He says, O son of Prita, Krishna, Arjuna, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So here, Krishna is saying that in order to instruct people, he gives the example himself of following all the rules and regulations of Vedic philosophy. Yet, he is not bound by any law of karma to do that. He's completely free of the influence of the material world. And on the other hand, the laws of karma are subject to him. He controls them. Therefore, he is the only person who can give liberation. And that's why his name is also Mukunda. No one else has that power. So he says that there's no work prescribed for me within all the world. However, work is prescribed to the demigods. They're in charge of the modes of material nature. They're in charge of so many things. They have to work. Every one of us has to work. Krishna does not have to do anything. Yet, to give a good example, he comes apparently as an ordinary human being, but he's not. He performs extraordinary activities, as we will see in this pastime of Govardhan. And here in the purport, Prabhupada says, since everything is in full opulence in the personality of Godhead and is existing in full truth, there's no duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to perform. One who must receive the results of work has some designated duty, but one who has nothing to achieve within the 3 planetary systems certainly has no duty. And yet Lord Krishna is engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the leader of the Kshatriyas, because the Kshatriyas are duty-bound to give protection to the distressed. Although he is above all regulations of the revealed scriptures, he does not do anything that violates the revealed scriptures. Okay, so since Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, since he's the source of all intelligence and knowledge, he can successfully use atheistic philosophy for a spiritual purpose, whereas none of us are capable of doing that. And then we're going to see this now. What he just explained to his father to convince him not to worship Indra, but to worship the hill or the mountain Govardhan, is an example of how he uses atheistic philosophy for a good purpose. Of course, we shouldn't try to do that, right? We should just teach straight Krishna consciousness without playing around with atheistic philosophy. But Krishna is capable of doing that, and that's rightfully so, because as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has powers that are unimaginable, called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, he can do things that we can't do. That makes some people envious, and that puts other people in awe. We're awe-inspired by Krishna's incredible, inconceivable powers. After Krishna spoke thus, he arranged for the cowherd men to worship Govardhana with the paraphernalia collected for the sacrifice to Indra. He then assumed a huge, unprecedented, transcendental form and devoured all the food and other offerings presented to Govardhana. Govardhana meaning this mountain. Now, he's a little boy, about 7 years old. He convinces his father not to worship Indra, although his father is extremely hesitant because it's a traditional thing for the farmers to worship the god of rain. But Krishna says, don't waste your time. Indra is also like us. He's also subject to the laws of karma. And therefore he can't, whatever he gives is not really his giving. So he leaves an open space there to understand how Krishna himself is the source of everything that Indra can give. And then whatever he gives is only temporary. So that's not a real gift. Like, for example, if I give you a really nice watch, but I don't tell you, then in 2 months it's going to disappear in thin air. Is that a real gift? You say. So he's saying whatever the demigods give, people say, oh, I prayed to Mata and my business did better. But then, the stock market goes up, stock market goes down, businesses develop, businesses decline. So what Mata didn't tell him is, whatever I'm going to give you, it's only going to be temporary. Right? However, Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter. He says that Antavatu phalam te samtad bhavate apamedasam. Devan deva yajo yanti madbhakta yanti mamapi. He said, men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. So there you are. When he says, men of small intelligence, alpamedasam, and whatever they give are antavat, perishable. So, those who worship the demigods go to the planets of demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet, eternal planet. So, yeah, you might be able to be elevated, or we might be able to be elevated to the planets of the devas, like Indraloka and other heavenly planets. But those planets are also temporary. They last, the lifespan on those planets is much longer than on the Earth, but they still experience birth, death, old age, and disease. Okay, so therefore, Krishna is saying, whatever the demigods give, it's only temporary. After Krishna spoke thus, he arranged for the cowherd men to worship Govardhana with the paraphernalia collected for the sacrifice to Indra. He then assumed a huge, unprecedented transcendental form and devoured all the food and other offerings presented to Govardhana. So he's showing, in this pastime, that in some mysterious way he's non-different than this mountain. That's why today, and for the last 5,000 years, when people are gifted a Govardhan Shila, a rock from Govardhan, they worship it as Krishna. Because he proved that he's non-different than this transcendental mountain. What? It was a big form of Shamsundar, Krishna. Yeah. As he did so, he proclaimed to the cowherd community that although they had worshipped Indra for so long, he had never appeared in person, whereas Govardhana himself had now manifested before their eyes and eaten their offerings of foodstuffs. Therefore, they should all now offer obeisances to Govardhana hill. Then Lord Krishna joined the cowherd boys in offering obeisances to his own newly assumed form. So here we have this mystical, in many ways baffling experience where this little 7-year-old boy has just convinced his father to stop worshiping Govardhan. Then he manifests a separate form as big as the mountain, devours or eats all the wonderful food. And then Krishna says, the little boy says, that they should offer obeisances to the mountain, because the mountain is non-different than himself. And he himself, the little 7-year-old Krishna, he also offers obeisances to his newly assumed form. So this is called Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. Only Krishna can do these things. He has mutually contradictory qualities. We do not have mutually contradictory qualities. So he can manifest a form of himself, but a gigantic one, pay obeisances to that form, and explain to everyone that he manifested this form to convince them that he's non-different than this wonderful mountain called Govardhan. Sukadeva Goswami said, while staying in that very place with his brother Baladeva, Lord Krishna happened to see the cowherd men busily engaged, arranging for a sacrifice to Indra. And in the commentary, Prabhupada writes, according to Srila Sridhara Swami and other acharyas, the word tatra, eva, in this verse indicate that Lord Krishna stayed in the village of the Brahmanas, whose wives had satisfied him by their devotion. Thus he gave his mercy to those Brahmanas as well as to their chaste wives, who had no one to associate with except their husbands. In that place, the cowherd men, headed by Lord Krishna's father, Nanda Maharaj, were somehow or other preparing an elaborate sacrifice to Lord Indra, and Lord Krishna reacted as follows. So, previous to this Govardhan pastime, Krishna blessed the wives of the Brahmanas in Vrindavana who were serving Kamsa. And Kamsa, of course, is the enemy of Krishna. He's a demon. And these Brahmanas, of course, even demons, they perform Vedic sacrifices, but not to please Krishna, to get material benefits for themselves. So what's going on nowadays in most temples is demigod worship meant to satisfy one's own material desires, not actually to satisfy Krishna. So we see that even demons perform Vedic sacrifices. Ravana built a fantastic city, Sri Lanka, in Lanka, made out of gold that he mined in Brazil. He was a high-tech engineer. He was able to build a tunnel from Sri Lanka all the way to Brazil, right through the core of the earth, and mine gold there, because Brazil has a lot of gold, bring it back to Lanka and build a golden city. So he was not an ordinary man. He was a Rakshasa. Rakshasas mostly live on the asteroids between the Earth and Mars. And every once in a while, they come down on the Earth. They take birth as rock stars, politicians, actors, all nonsense people. And they mislead people. Like Hitler is one example of a Rakshasa. Stalin is another example of a Rakshasa. They kill a lot of people, and then they go back to where they came from after causing so much havoc. So Ravana was a much bigger Rakshasa than Hitler or Stalin or any of the others. And he caused a lot of havoc. And Lord Ramachandra came and had to kill him. So, we see here that at one time, Kamsa was engaging brahmanas to perform sacrifices for his material benefit. And when Krishna asked his cowherd boys, he said, I'm hungry, go to this sacrifice of the brahmanas. They're at the point where they finish offering naiveda or food, and ask them for some prasadam. But he warned them, don't be surprised if they refuse to give it to you. So Krishna knew the mindset of these brahmanas. They were materialistic brahmanas working for a demon, doing sacrifices meant only for material opulence, not to please the Lord. Therefore, Krishna says, Yajnartat karmano nyatra lokamam karma bandhanai tadaratam karma konteya muktasanga samachara. Third chapter, 27, third chapter, 9th verse, where Krishna says that all Vedic sacrifices should uniquely be offered to me. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in the material world. So any other type of sacrifice where Krishna is not the beneficiary, but a demigod or whoever is the beneficiary, that type of sacrifice causes bondage, or karma band, entanglement in the laws of karma, and obligation to continue the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, he says, therefore, O Arjuna, perform your prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So here we see, even in the time of Krishna, in Vrindavan, there was a demoniac leader named Kamsa, and he had Brahmins, Vedic Brahmins. This is before the advent of Kali Yuga, the present age, performing Vedic sacrifices, but only for material benefit. And therefore, what does that do? That causes bondage. So when the cowherd boys asked the Brahmanas at this particular junction of the sacrifice, after they offered Naivedya, for some prasadam, they said, Krishna is hungry. They refused to give it. Why? Because they were afraid if Kamsa found out, he would cut them, or he would fire them, meaning he would lay them off, and they wouldn't have any more income, because they knew Kamsa didn't like Krishna. So the cowherd boys come back to Krishna, and they're very sad. They said, they refused to give us prasadam for you, Krishna. And Krishna smiled and said, yes, I told you, don't be surprised if they do that. Now go to their wives and ask them for prasadam. Now the wives of the Brahmanas were simple ladies. They were not expert in performing Vedic sacrifices. Their husbands were expert at reciting the Vedas, like that, and but for material benefit. That's called puja for hire. Puja for hire. It's one of the main reasons why Hinduism is degrading geometrically at this point. So what happens? When they ask the Brahmanas' wives, they're so anxious. They say, oh, yes, Krishna's hungry. Oh, we'll give anything for him. We'll give our lives for him. So they cook a nice feast for him, and they insist on going to wherever Krishna is and serving him to him personally. So now we're going to hear what happens. Oh, no. Well, anyway, this was in the previous chapter to this one. So they do that, and Krishna is very pleased with them. And then the wives of the Brahmanas pray to Krishna. They say, look, Krishna, our husbands are so nonsense. They're only interested in material things. They were so arrogant, they refused to give you prasadam. But we'll give you as much prasadam as you want. And we'll do anything you want. So Krishna says, okay, go back to your husbands. They say, what? Those nonsense fools Yes, please go back. You give them prasadam also, and we'll pray for them. Hopefully they will one day understand. So that's what they did. And that's why he says that Krishna decided to stay there. Thus, he gave his mercy to those brahmanas, as well as to their chaste wives, who had no one to associate with except their husbands. That's not good association if you're associating with a husband who's not Krishna conscious, right? But because the wives listened to Krishna, then Krishna blessed their husbands also. Right? Now, in that place, the cowherd men headed by Lord Krishna's father, Nanda Maharaj, were somehow or other preparing. So while Krishna is staying with the brahmanas' families, he sees that his father and the other cowherd men are preparing this elaborate sacrifice for Indra. Being the omniscient supersoul, the Supreme Lord Krishna already understood the situation, yet he still humbly inquired from the elders, headed by his father, Nanda Maharaj. Lord Krishna was eager to enact his pastime of lifting Govardhana hill and defeating the false pride of Indra, and thus he cleverly inquired from his father about the imminent sacrifice. Lord Krishna said, "My dear father, kindly explain to me what this great endeavor of yours is all about. What is it meant to accomplish? If this is a ritual sacrifice, then for whose satisfaction is it intended? And by what means is it going to be executed?" So here, Krishna is putting his father on the hot seat. "Please tell me about it, O father. I have a great desire to know, and am ready to hear in good faith. Certainly no secrets are to be kept by saintly personalities, who see all others as equal to themselves, and who have no conception of mine or another's, and who do not consider who is friend, who is enemy, and who is neutral." So in a commentary, Prabhupada writes, Lord Krishna's father might have thought that his son was a mere child, and thus could not properly question the validity of a Vedic sacrifice. But the Lord's clever statement here would certainly have convinced Nanda Maharaj that Sri Krishna was making a serious, not a whimsical inquiry, and that a serious answer should thus be given. Then Krishna continues, "One who is neutral may be avoided like an enemy, but a friend should be considered like one's own self." Purport or commentary. Even if Nanda Maharaj did not see friends, enemies, and neutral parties as entirely equal, Lord Krishna, being Nanda Maharaj's son, was certainly a most trustworthy friend and should therefore not be left out of the intimate discussions. In other words, Nanda Maharaj might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform, and thus Lord Krishna furnished additional reasons why his father should trust him and reveal the entire purpose of the sacrifice. Now you see, this is a very profound statement here. Yes, people who are businessmen in a sense. Nanda Maharaj is not a merchant, but he's definitely a Vaishya, and he's managing 900,000 or more cows, and that's a huge number. And he was very, very, very wealthy. Anyone who does massive cow protection becomes wealthy. There's no doubt about it. It's a lot of hard work, but it's very well remunerated if one has pure, if one takes care of the cows. So Nanda Maharaj might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform. Now this is a profound statement. You see, why does he say, well, let's discuss this point. Might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform. What is Prabhupada saying here? What does he mean by this? I mean, you're married. Do you think you could act on the highest saintly platform? No? Why not? Huh? Why not? Huh? Okay. Yeah, so this shows that we become conditioned. It's a symptom of conditioning. Conditioning means we're trained not to do our best. We're trained by circumstances and predicaments not to do our best. In other words, we think, I'm not capable of being a pure devotee because I'm married, because I work in a company, because sometimes I go to birthday parties where they have egg in their cake and they drink wine, and because of this, because of that. Actually, what does he say here? Nanda Maharaj might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform, and thus Krishna furnished additional reasons why his father should trust him and reveal the entire purpose of the sacrifice. What does he mean, the entire purpose of the sacrifice? The entire purpose of the sacrifice is there's no attempt at all to please Krishna. It's only to appease Lord Indra so that he gives them rain so that they have more profit. Of course, when there's a drought, everybody suffers. The cows suffer and the farmers suffer. And there were certain years when there was major drought in the Midwest. The farmers had to kill a bunch of their cows and sell them for meat because they were not able to feed them. There was not enough feed for their cows because of the drought. That doesn't mean they're going to let their cows just die naturally. So they kill them and they sell them for meat. So you see, it's a very, very unsavory endeavor when money is the bottom line for all decisions. So as a household, he's thinking, we're doing this sacrifice not for a pure reason. That's the whole point. Krishna wants to understand why they're doing it. And it's not for a pure reason. It's not to please Krishna. Yajna tat karmanonya lokamam karna bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samacha. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage to this material world. So Krishna doesn't want his father, his own father, the father of Krishna, to be bound by his works, to taking birth over and over again. And in the purport, there's the 3rd chapter, 9th verse, Prabhupada says, since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. In other words, maintenance of the body. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances meant to please the Lord. All sacrificial performances are also meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. The Vedas enjoin Yajna vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. In other words, all activities, human activities, are meant to please Lord Vishnu or Krishna. If we, as human beings, engage in activities not meant for Lord Krishna's pleasure, but for, let's say, a demigod like Durga Mata or Shiva or Ganapati, then we'll get results. We'll probably get positive material results from it. But those positive material results will entangle us to continue in the cycle of birth and death. Obviously, you have to take birth again to enjoy those positive material results. So it's entangling. And if we get them more quickly in this body, it just entangles us deeper in the unending mesh of karmic reactions. So if one performs these sacrifices for the pleasure of the Lord, then that's the same as directly serving the Lord. That's what he's saying. But if you do the same thing for your own material benefit, like Ravana did and like Kamsa did, then that entangles you. And you become caught up in the karma band, the entanglement of karmic reactions. Krishna consciousness is therefore a performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse, meaning only for the pleasure of the Lord. The Varna, not asking anything in return. Na danam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va, jagdisha kamaye, mama janmani, janmanishware, avatad bhakti rahai tuki tvai. Oh my Lord, I don't want any number, I don't want any amount of wealth, I don't want to take advantage of anyone for my own sense gratification, I don't want any number of followers or disciples, or I don't want a large number of sons or a big family, anything like that. And I don't want liberation either. I only want your causeless devotional service. In other words, serving you without any material motive. Birth after birth. So, that prayer was by Lord Chaitanya. And also in the Dhammadarastakam prayers that we're praying now. Varam deva moksha va moksha vadimva nachanyam vrineham varisadapya idam te vapurnata gopala balam sadame manasa virastam kimanyai. So this verse says, oh my Lord, I don't want the benediction of achieving the Brahman effulgence, merging into the light emanating from your body. I don't want any boon that can be achieved by following the 9 processes of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedam. I only want to see in my heart this picture of you, of Bala Gopal, this sweet young boy, being tied up by his mom, tied up with the rope of love by his mother, Yasoda, eternally. I just want this fixed in my mind. So this is the inner workings of the mind and the heart of a genuine devotee. Whereas the inner workings of the mind of a materialistically inclined person is, I want more profit, I want a bigger house, I want a better car, I want this, I want that. I want, right? Or as the materialists pray to Devi Mata, they say, Dhanam Dehi, Janam Dehi, Rupam Dehi, Yaso Dehi, 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 Dehi. Dehi means give me. See? So we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and they chant the gimme mantra. Gimme, gimme, gimme. You ever chant the gimme mantra? I hope not. Anyway, therefore one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage, for both good and evil work have their reactions. In other words, even good works have their reactions. It's not, some people say, oh, I don't want to be part of any organized religion. I don't believe in hierarchical religions. My religion is I just do good to other people. If I see some bum on the street, I'll give him $5. Who cares if he buys wine or beer? Let him be happy. This is like ridiculous nonsense. That's not doing good, either to himself or to that poor person on the street. Because if he buys that wine, then the person who gave him the $5 or $10 or $50, they get 1/6 of his bad karma. So how can it be good for anyone? It's neither good for the poor man, it's neither good for the man that's giving him money. But yet he thinks, oh, I gave a bum $5 today. I did my goodwill duty in life. No, it's a bunch of nonsense. So, therefore, for both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu, and while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work. What is the great art of doing work? Great art of doing work. It's called Yoga Koshalam. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita's 2nd chapter, where Krishna says, let's see where he says that. Yoga Koshalam, Yoga Koshalam. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrite duskrite tasmat yogaya yujyasva yoga karma sukoshalam. This verse says, 2nd chapter, 50th verse, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Just like, as one guru has a saying, the art of living. But this is the art of all work. It's even better than the art of living means you're living better. You're more comfortable in the material world. That's Maya, actually. What's more important is the art of work. How to work without any karmic reaction. That's called the art of work. And that's called Yoga Koshalam. So that's what Krishna is teaching. He's not teaching the art of living eternally in the material world birth after birth and suffering. That's nonsense. He's teaching the art of work by which one becomes liberated from the cycle of karma and goes back to Godhead. I'm going to read the purport to this verse. Since time immemorial, each living entity has accumulated the various reactions of his good and bad work. You see, that means people have been going through millions and billions of births and deaths in this world since time immemorial, accumulating the various reactions of good and bad karma. As such, he or she is continuously ignorant of his real constitutional position. And so therefore, what's the value of the art of living? We should learn the art of working. It's much more important than the art of living. You living and going up and down like on a Ferris wheel, sometimes deva, sometimes human beings, sometimes rakshasa, sometimes cockroach. What kind of life is that? What kind of future is that? You're going from third-class prisoner to first-class prisoner and back down to third-class prisoner. You're still a prisoner. That doesn't make sense. See, that's called the Ferris wheel syndrome, going up and down in different species of life. However, he says, since time immemorial, each living entity has accumulated the various reactions of his good and bad work. As such, he is continuously ignorant of his real constitutional position. In other words, this good karma is also ignorance. There's no such thing as good karma. It's all bad because one stays in material world. There is, however, a principle of akarma. There's three types of karma: karma, vikarma, and akarma. So karma is following the Vedic rituals, but for material benefit. So that keeps you in the material world. Of course, it might elevate you to a higher platform for some time, but then you come back down again. How do we know that? 9th chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Shine punya matyulokam vishalam. Verse number. We can see now by hearing all this and seeing what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that most gurus don't really know what they're talking about. They're just teaching people how to stay on the Ferris wheel of up and down in the material world. Tetam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam shine punye martilokam vishanti evam trayi dharmam anuprapana gata gatam kama kama labante. 9th chapter, 21st verse. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, in other words, the previous verse said, those who study the Vedas and drink the soma juice, you get the soma juice on the moon. The moon is not a dusty planet, as the Americans are saying. It's the planet on which the devas go to drink soma juice. Soma juice is a liquor. It's not like beer or whiskey, but it's a type of intoxicating, well, somewhat intoxicating herbal preparation that you take one drink of it and it increases your life 10,000 years. Therefore, the devas go there to drink soma juice because it enlivens them. But only 10,000 years. Well, that's nothing for the devas, right? That's like, you drink something here and it gives you more energy, like 5-hour energy drink, or Monster energy drink. Did you all see the picture of what happens when you drink Monster energy drink last week in the class? That one man drank it and they cut off half of his head. Now he has a head with a big hole in it here. Did you see that picture? Yeah. That's what happens when you drink Monster during 5-hour energy. So you get 5 hours energy. The Vedas drink soma juice, they get 10,000 years of energy, right? But that's like a drop in a bucket. It's really not that great. So anyway, this says, those who study the Vedas and drink the soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. They come back to Pioneer Square, or come back to New York City, Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. Repeated birth and death, that's called the Ferris wheel syndrome, going up and down in the material world. One who is promoted to the higher planetary systems enjoys a longer duration of life and better facilities for sense enjoyment, yet one is not allowed to stay there forever. One is again sent back to this earth upon finishing the resultant fruits of pious activities. He who has not attained perfection of knowledge, as indicated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janma Dasyayata, or in other words, he who fails to understand Krishna, the cause of all causes, becomes baffled about achieving the ultimate goal of life and is thus subjected to the routine of being promoted to the higher planets and then again coming down as if situated on a Ferris wheel, which sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down. The purport is that instead of being elevated to the spiritual world, from which there is no longer any possibility of coming down, one simply revolves in the cycle of birth and death on the higher and lower planetary systems. One should better take to the spiritual world to enjoy an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge, and never return to this miserable material world. So here you have a wonderful purport explaining what happens by paying for archanas that simply give you a material benefit. You just go up and down in the material world. It's not a real archana or worship. It's just like they say in Hindi, they say, Neem Hakim Khatrijan. Half doctor means no doctor. Your life is endangered, right? In the same way, half Brahmana means no Brahmana. Your life is endangered, right? Is that right? Neem Hakim Khatrijan, yeah. So anyway, one's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which teaches one to surrender unto Lord Sri Krishna in all respects and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth. Arjuna is therefore advised to act in Krishna consciousness, the purifying process of resultant action. In other words, there's three types of karma. Karma is performing the archanas and the pujas for personal benefit, but you're still following the Vedas, but you're not following the real purpose of the Vedas. So you get the material benefits, but it keeps you longer in the material world. And there's no guarantee that you'll keep going up and up and up. All you have to do is make one mistake and you go down, down, down. So you go up and down in the cycle of birth and death in the different species of life. On the other hand, there's vikarma. That's what the demons do, purposely break the Vedic principles, so they just go down. But they still perform Vedic sacrifices, as we see. Kamsa is performing Vedic sacrifices. He's paying the brahmanas. These are brahmanas who do puja for hire, right? No pun intended for using your name here, right? So the demons also do Vedic pujas, right? But for material benefit. And then there's akarma, that's called the art of work, not the art of living over and over again in the material world, but the art of work, by which there's no karmic reaction, only spiritual benefit. And that is what the wives of the brahmanas did in Vrindavana. Their husbands were doing puja for hire, or karma yoga, with a desire for material benefit, employed by Kamsa, a demon. So, although they were performing Vedic sacrifices, the results were going for Kamsa's personal benefit, and he's a demon, so the brahmanas share 1/6 of Kamsa's bad karma also, you see, besides incorrectly doing the Vedic sacrifices.
So brahmanas, they get the, even if they are not good, they get the karma of the yajman?
Yeah. If the yajman is a demon, like Kamsa or Ravana. Ravana also had Brahmins doing Vedic sacrifices in Lanka, but to kill Krishna, to kill Rama. Does that make sense? Right? So, but they know the value of Vedic mantras and yagyas, but they don't know the real value. They think it's just for material benefit. So therefore they perform elaborate rituals for material benefit. So then now you can understand most of the brahmanas in India, not all of them, but I would say most of them, they're in a business. It's puja for hire. They're making money by performing materialistic, for Vedic sacrifices, but for materialistic purposes. So one's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which teaches one to surrender unto Lord Sri Krishna in all respects and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth. Arjuna is therefore advised to act in Krishna consciousness, the purifying process of resultant action. In other words, it purifies all these impure desires, and eventually you come to desiring only to please Krishna by everything you do. That's called Yoga Koshalam, the art of work by which one is liberated. Okay, so now we continue. You see this Govardhan Puja, Govardhan celebration is extremely profound. And basically what Krishna is doing here is showing his father and all the inhabitants of Vrindavana that don't waste your time worshipping the devas. Just worship me, he says. And if you worship me, all the devas will be satisfied. But if you worship the devas, the benedictions they give you is actually a curse, because it's only going to keep you longer in the material world. It's not going to liberate you. And he explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, 9th chapter again, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shariyanvita tepi mam eva konteya yajante avidi purvakam. 9th chapter, 23rd verse, he says, those who are devotees of other gods, meaning the demigods, the devatas, and who worship them with faith, actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. Aham hi sarvayagyanam bhuktacha prabharevacha na tumam abhijananti tatvinatas chivantite. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. So, persons who are engaged in the worship of demigods are not very intelligent. Alpa made it so. Although such worship is offered to me indirectly. Why does he say those who worship the devatas offer me indirectly? Because the devatas are something like the viceroy in colonial British control of India. The viceroy was appointed by the king or queen of England to oversee the government in the British government in India. What did the viceroy do? He would go around to all the Maharajas. The Maharajas were the regional rulers at that time, or kings of India, and they would give him precious gifts. And what would he do? He'd take all those gifts, but he wouldn't take them for himself. He'd put them in a boat and send them back to the king or queen of England. So he was the representative of the king or queen to collect all those expensive, precious gifts. But it was to ship it back to the real king, which was in England. So in the same way, the devatas are simply like the viceroys that were functioning in colonial India. They receive the offerings of the yagyas, the sacrifices, but they offer it to Krishna, and Krishna offers them certain benedictions so that they can give it to the greedy people who do those rituals. Okay, so we'll continue a few more minutes after the opening of the deities. So he's trying to, he began to use the argument that his father shouldn't keep any secret from him and should explain to him why he's performing this ritual sacrifice. And he continues, one who is neutral may be avoided like an enemy, but a friend should be considered like one's own self. So all this is called granny wisdom. He's explaining, he says, someone remains neutral in a controversial situation, that's equal to an enemy. But a friend should be considered like one's own self. Yes, therefore in English we say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So it can be taken two ways. A friend in need is a friend indeed, meaning you'll know who your friends are when you're in difficulty because they'll come forward to help you. And you'll know who's not your friend because they'll stay neutral or they'll be against you. But neutral is equal to being against you because it doesn't really help you, right? Even if Nanda Maharaj did not see friends, enemies, and neutral parties as entirely equal, Lord Krishna, being Nanda Maharaj's son, was certainly a most trustworthy friend and should therefore not be left out of intimate discussions. In other words, Nanda Maharaj might have thought that as a householder he could not act on the highest saintly platform, and thus Lord Krishna furnished additional reasons why his father should trust him and reveal the entire purpose of the sacrifice. In other words, basically, he wants to corner his father to explain frankly why he's doing this. And obviously it's for a material reason. There's no real desire to please Lord Vishnu. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Nanda Maharaj stood silent, doubting his position of paternal aloofness, since Garga Muni had predicted that his son would be equal to Narayana in his qualities, and the young boy had already conquered and killed many powerful demons. So he's seeing that his son is asking him very pointed questions, and he can't really avoid answering him. And now he realizes his son is not an ordinary little kid, so he can't just brush him off. And say, well, look, this is way above you. You have to get a little bit older, and then I can explain to you. He's not. He can see that he can't use that excuse to brush him off, because his son is, as Garga Muni said, equal to Narayana in his qualities. When people in this world perform activities, sometimes they understand what they are doing, and sometimes they don't. Those who know what they are doing achieve success in their work, whereas ignorant people do not know. So, all those young Hindus who the only thing their parents told them was Jai Karo, Jai Karo, Jai Karo. Okay, Jai Karo, okay. But they never explained why Jai Karo, why they should offer their humble obeisances when they come to the temple, why they should bow down, why they should do this, why they should do that. They just say, we just do it because it's our tradition. Well, that may fly in a certain context where there's a lot of illiteracy, but nowadays people know how to read, and most of the stuff they read is junk, politics, junk novels, and all those books are laced with atheism, and then you have these very clever atheists who use all kinds of reason and logic to convince people there's no God. So, therefore, if their family never really explained the basis of the different rituals they perform, just like when I went to church, everything was ritualized. And no one ever really explained. They would explain a little bit in our Sunday school classes, but nothing profound. And all the liturgy, all the ritual performances were done in an ancient language that nobody could understand, or very little understanding. But then they started to, in church at one point, they started to translate ritual performances into understandable English. And when I read that, I suddenly realized that most of the ritual performances were for ancestors of the church or ancient prophets of the Old Testament. And eventually I realized that some of the rituals they were performing were not even Christian. They had been incorporated into Christianity at the time when the church took over from the previous religions, and in order to make that transition, they incorporated some of the more ancient religious performances, and they sort of made it Christianized. So then I realized, that maybe half of all the ritual performances that were going on in the church were from previous religions that had become Christianized. I mean, the rituals had become Christianized. Like, for example, there was one saying at the harvest of the grapes. So the harvest of the grapes in the fall, they have a grape festival, and then they celebrate that in the church for making wine. It has nothing to do with Christianity, absolutely zero. But it had been passed on from ancient times. So Krishna is trying to find out from his father, what's the real purpose of this Indra Puja? Such being the case, this ritualistic endeavor of yours should be clearly explained to me. Is it a ceremony based on scriptural injunction or simply a custom of ordinary society? And you see, I'm telling you, even today, a lot of rituals in the Christian church, and I'm sure in Hinduism, and I'm sure in Islam or Buddhism, is it a custom, simply a custom of ordinary society, or is it based on scriptural injunctions? It's a fundamental question. Nanda Maharaj replied, the great Lord Indra is the controller of the rain. The clouds are his personal representatives, and they directly provide rainwater, which gives happiness and sustenance to all creatures. So now Nanda Maharaj is going to answer Krishna's questions directly. He says, this Indra Puja is important because he's in charge of the rain. And not only is he in charge of the rain, the clouds themselves are personal representatives of Lord Indra. In other words, the clouds are actually persons. They're not just a collection of water. And they're working under Indra's direction. Without clean rainwater, purport or commentary, without clean rainwater, the earth could not possibly provide food or drink for anyone, nor could there be cleanliness. Thus, it would be difficult to overestimate the value of rain. Obviously, yes, without water, although seeds have life in them, but you need water to wet them so they sprout. So water is essential for all life-giving activities. Then Krishna says, Nanda Maharaj says, not only we, my dear son, but also many other men worship Indra, the Lord and Master of the rain-giving clouds. We offer him grain and other paraphernalia of worship produced through his own discharge in the form of rain. So in other words, we offer to Indra the products produced with the rain that he supplies. Nanda Maharaj patiently tried to explain the facts of life to his young son, Sri Krishna. But in fact, Nanda and all the residents of Vrindavana would learn an astonishing lesson, as explained in this chapter. Yeah, Nanda Maharaj is seeing the immediate material cause of their prosperity, rain from Indra, but that's not the efficient cause. The more distant original cause, they're only seeing the immediate cause. So just like if you sit down in front of a paddy field for 1 year, you would see that at a certain time of year, little scorpions come out of it. And you would think, scorpions are born from the paddy field. Is that true? Well, it looks like that, but it's not true. The scorpions are born from the eggs that the mother scorpion lays in the paddy field. But, see, previously, especially the Greeks, they started this notion of spontaneous generation. Spontaneous generation means things just poof, appear out of nowhere, spontaneously, without any cause, without any material cause. And just like the scorpion, little baby scorpions coming out of the paddy field. So they think that's spontaneous generation. But actually it's not, because they didn't see the mother scorpion go into the paddy field late at night in the darkness, lay her eggs, and then wait a certain period of time. It could be months, it could be years, for the right conditions to be produced of heat and nutrient base in the paddy field. And then all of a sudden, the eggs hatch and the scorpions come out. See? So there's no such thing as spontaneous generation. In the same way, the wine producers in France, they saw that sometimes their wine would become vinegar, and other times it would become wine, and they didn't understand why for many, many years. Then along came Louis Pasteur with his microscope. The microscope has been around since the 16th, 17th century in Europe. And he was a careful, as a scientist, a careful observer. And he saw that there were different types of microscopic creatures floating around in his petri dish, or let's say a broth made of nutrients. And some things, later on he understood there were yeast, and other things were bacteria, other things were crawling around in that microscopic world. And then he noticed that yeast makes wine and bacteria makes vinegar. So this is something the winemakers didn't know. Since ancient times they've been making wine, but they didn't know exactly why. Sometimes it becomes wine, sometimes it becomes vinegar. So, but that was Louis Pasteur that was able to figure that out with his microscope and careful observation. And in the same way, we think that we only see the immediate cause of things. We don't see the more, let's say, background cause. Just like you see a puppet show and you think the puppet is like a being, like a human being, but we don't see behind the stage where the puppeteer is there with the hand puppet or with the string puppet and making the puppet move and speaking. So if you only see the puppet, you think the puppet is real, you're only seeing the material aspect. The deeper aspect is there's a human being behind the puppet. So in the same way, Nanda Maharaj is only seeing the devatas, Indra, Chandra, Varuna. He's not seeing the let's say, cause of the devas, which is Krishna. So Krishna is trying to hamstring his father in a corner so that his father will, first of all, reveal his incomplete understanding of why he's worshipping Indra, and then come to a much deeper understanding. So Krishna continues, his father continues. By accepting the remnants of sacrifices performed to Indra, people sustain their lives and accomplish the threefold aims of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. Thus, Lord Indra is the agent responsible for the fruitive success or the materialistic success of industrious people. So his father's an educated man. He can explain in simple language why they're doing this. They're doing it for Dharma, Artha, Kama. The first three principles of Vedic Dharma is to attain religiosity, economic development, and material happiness. The fourth one is moksha, liberation. Of course, Indra, even Nanda Maharaj understands Indra cannot give moksha, but he can give, he can inspire people to follow the Vedic ritual performances, that's Dharma, for material benefit, artha, and material benefit gives kama, material happiness. And explanation, Prabhupada says, one might object that people sustain themselves by farming, industry, and so on. But as previously mentioned, all human and non-human endeavor depends on food and drink, which cannot be produced without ample rain. By the word Trivarga, Nanda Maharaj further points out that the prosperity achieved through the sacrifice for Indra is meant not merely for sense gratification, but also for religiosity and economic development. Unless people are well fed, it is difficult for them to execute their duties, and without performance of duty, it is difficult to be religious. Okay. This religious principle, Nanda Maharaj continues, is based on sound tradition. It's been going on for a long time. Anyone who rejects it out of lust, enmity, fear, or greed will certainly fail to achieve good fortune. So his father's giving him a caveat. Caveat means a warning, an official warning. Don't mess with our traditions. Don't mess with this. Don't interrupt this thing because our whole economic development, happiness, and religiosity is based on it. And Prabhupada explains, if a person neglects his religious duties because of lust, envy, fear, or greed, his life will never be brilliant or perfect. Well, these are true statements. And Nanda Maharaj is a very, very intelligent person, and he's telling his son, if you stop this, then it's only because of lust, envy, or fear or greed. So, if people want to stop you from doing something, they intimidate you by saying, oh, if you do this, it's a sign that you're lusty or greedy or fearful or so forth. And your life will never be perfect. So Sukadev Goswami now chimes in on this narration. He's the narrator, and he says, when Lord Keshava, Krishna, heard the statements of his father Nanda and other senior residents of Vraja, he addressed his father as follows. To arouse anger in Lord Indra. So what he's going to say now is going to get Indra, who's listening in on this discussion, very angry. And in the commentary, Srila Sridhar Swami explains that Lord Krishna's intention was not simply to insult a demigod, but rather to knock down the great mountain of false pride that had arisen within the Lord's tiny servant, Lord Indra, who was supposed to represent the Lord. By lifting Govardhan Hill, Lord Krishna would thus initiate a blissful annual festival called Govardhan Puja, and he would further enjoy the pleasant pastime of dwelling for several days beneath the hill with all his loving devotees. So Krishna has many purposes to stop the Indra Puja. He wants to come more intimately closer to the residents of Vrindavana and vice versa, have them come much closer to him by putting them in a dire situation where their lives and livelihood are at risk, and Krishna saves them. But in the process, they become intimately connected to Krishna. Lord Krishna said, it is by the force of karma that a living entity takes birth, and it is by karma alone that he meets his destruction. His happiness, distress, fear, and sense of security all arise as effects of karma. So in other words, he's saying, I don't accept this family tradition, or traditional stuff, and I don't accept all the warnings you're giving by violating this religious principle. It's not a real religious principle. It's a greedy religious principle that it'll produce all inauspicious things. He's saying everyone is bound by their karma. It doesn't depend on this ritual. It depends on how you perform the ritual. That's what he's saying. So if you perform it for material benefit, then it's not really beneficial. If you perform it only to please Lord Vishnu or Narayana, that's different. That means that you'll be liberated once and for all from the cycle of birth and death. That's the ultimate solution. But performing for your own material benefit and pretending that the Deva is the one that's giving it, that'll just bound you for more repeated birth and death. Lord Krishna minimizes the importance of the demigods by speaking the philosophy known as Karmavada or Karma Mimamsa, which basically is atheism with a belief in reincarnation. So that there are a lot of religions like that. They're atheistic, but they accept reincarnation. So I don't want to name the names. No, I don't want to name the names because then people accuse me of publicly defaming their religion. But you can tell if you encounter a person who's of a particular religion, but they believe in reincarnation, then you know exactly who it is now. You know.
Does this mean, though, that we should not follow traditions that are given down to you from generations?
It depends. Like, for example, once there was a wedding in India, and the whole family was there, the bride and groom were there, and all of a sudden a bird fell out of the sky dead right in front of the bride and groom. And the grandfather, who was like the elder, he said, held up his hand and said, "Wait a minute!" And he slowly took his hat off, put it down like this in front of him, and walked very slowly toward the bird and very carefully put his hat over the bird. Then he raised his hand and said, "Now continue!" Right. So then they performed the wedding. So years later, the children of the bride and groom that got married, they grew up and it was their turn to get married, right? So the boy was getting married, and when the family started getting everything ready, the son of the grandfather said, "We need a dead bird." And everyone looked at him, "What for?" I said, "No, you need a dead bird. You can't do our marriage in our family cannot happen without a dead bird." So they got a dead bird and they brought it. And they said, "Where should we put it?" You have to put it here. It's only about 12 inches from the feet of the bride and groom. And they said, "How do you know?" I said, "I'm remembering everything," he said. "It was my grandfather taught me." He said, "There's a tradition in our family." So they put the dead bird right there. And he got his grandfather's hat, right? So like a minute before they started, he raised it and, "Wait a minute!" Right? He very slowly took the hat off, put it down in front of his chest, and walked solemnly toward the bird. And he put it down on the bird. Then he raised it. "Now go ahead!" Right. Now this went on generation after generation in that family. They could not perform the marriage of their children without the ceremony of the dead bird. So if it's that kind of tradition, that can be, that's nonsense. You see?
What about religious traditions?
Well, the religious tradition also, we're explaining, you can perform, like even Kamsa, even Ravana performed Vedic traditional yagyas, right? Meant for pleasing Lord Indra, meant for pleasing Brahma, meant for pleasing, Shiva, meant for pleasing Mata, right? But for material benefit. You understand? So those type of religious activities, even though they're Vedic, are very inauspicious. They do not lead to liberation from the cycle of birth and death. They keep you in the cycle of birth and death.
What if you don't have material desires that you're asking out of that tradition? But you're just doing it because...
But if you hire a priest who does, that was the example of Bali Maharaj and Sukracharya. Sukracharya taught him that all sacrifices should be offered to Lord Vishnu. But then Lord Vishnu appears as Vamanadev, and he says, "Don't give him a damn penny." And he said, "Why not? You said everything's meant for Vishnu." He said, "Yeah, but in this form, Vishnu is going to take away everything you have, then I won't get my salary." You see? So you might be sincere, but if you hire a materialistic brahmana, you get misled. Like, for example, you have sat down in ritual performances, right? Okay. So let's say it's Satyanarayana Puja, right? You know what that is. So in the beginning, I'm going to ask you a question now, just answer it. In the beginning, did the brahmana who performed it ask you to say mama? Okay. That's nonsense. You know what mama means? Huh? No, mama. Yeah, mine. This, in other words, he's asking you to say mama so that you say, this ritual performance is for me. Is that the real purpose of the ritual performance? Now, listen to this now. Krishna is telling Arjuna, 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 6. See, what I'm saying, I'm not making it up, right? If I'm making it up, you can ask me a question. So where does Krishna say that in Bhagavad Gita? Or how do you know that? You know, you can ask me those questions. If I can't answer you, then you can disregard anything I say. 18th chapter, verse 6. Etanyapi tu karmani sangam tyakva falani cha kartavyani time parta nischitam matam uttamam. All these activities, O Arjuna, should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. He's talking about yagyas, Vedic yagyas. The previous verse says, acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance, in other words, yagya, dana, and tapasya, or tapas, purify even the great souls. Now in the next verse he says, all these activities, yagya, dana, tapas, should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. There's no mama involved, right? They should be performed as a matter of duty. O son of Prita, that is my final opinion. And in the commentary by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he explains, although all sacrifices are purifying, one should not expect any result from such performances. In other words, all sacrifices which are meant for material advancement in life should be given up. But sacrifices that purify one's existence and elevate one to the spiritual plane should not be stopped. Everything that leads to Krishna consciousness must be encouraged. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also it is said that any activity which leads to devotional service to the Lord should be accepted. That is the highest criterion of religion. A devotee of the Lord should accept any kind of work, sacrifice, or charity which will help him in the discharge of devotional service to the Lord. So, you see, if you have a Brahmana come to your house and perform Satyanarayana Puja, and he says, repeat, mama, and you repeat, mama, you have just taken an about face from Vedic tradition. Right? Now, I'll give you an example. You're a mother, right? You have a child. So let's say you were a Baniya mother. You know what Baniya means, right? Now, Baniya in Hindi, it means businessman. You're a businessman mom, right? So, when you were, let's say you were an IT person, you were earning $150,000 a year at Amazon, right? Then you got pregnant, and it took you 9 months. So 9 months times $150,000, like what? It's like $120,000, right? So you write that down in your journal, right? Then you go to the hospital. It costs you $8,000 to have the baby. You write down $8,000 and the date. Then you start milking the baby and changing the diaper. So you're counting all your hours, right? Now your son is 24 years old. He just graduated from IIT in India, and he got a job for $150,000 at Amazon, right? And you present him the bill. He said, you owe me this much money. You say, now, did you really perform all this service out of love for your son? No. It was just a business arrangement. And here's the bill. You owe me $24 million. That's what it cost me to raise you for, 24 years. And to pay for your education and everything. These are all my hours. You have the whole thing listed. You see, you didn't really perform any service. It was just a material business transaction. So, if you go to Mata and say, Mata, Dhanam Dehi. Dhanam Dehi means give me money. Janam Devi, give me a good birth. Rupam Devi, give me a good body. Yaso Devi, give me fame. And, give me children, good children. Give me this, give me. Right? Does that sound like religion? What if you had two friends? One friend always gives you something out of love. The other friend always asks you to give them something because they're greedy. Which friend would you like? Huh?
The one who cares about you?
Yeah, and it's always giving, right? So now you can understand something about God. There's two devotees. One is always saying, Dhanam De, Janam De, Dhanam De, De. And the other person is coming to God and saying, please take me. Here is some ghee. Here's some milk. Here, always coming and giving. Which one do you think Krishna is going to appreciate more? You see, by analyzing yourself, now you understand something about God. You're not God, but you're part and parcel of God. So you can understand something about God by analyzing yourself in a sincere way. You see? So all this mama business, that's dehi, gimme. It has nothing to do with religion, pure religion. It has nothing to do with devotion. Does that explain it? If the tradition is some nonsense tradition that has nothing to do with scriptural, performance, like, for example, the Dehi business is nonsense. It only keeps you in the material world longer. It doesn't liberate you. Right? Even if it's good karma, it's still conditioning one to birth and death. Now, have you ever heard this explanation before? No. Right. You see, this is the problem. That I'm saying 98% of the gurus and brahmanas are misleading the people. Not only in Hinduism, it's the same thing in Christianity. Why do you think the Protestant church, the Protestants broke away from the Catholic Church? It's for the same reason. In the 15th, 16th century, the church was doing all these archanas. We call it archana. They call it blessings. Right? So people would come, they would pay the priest, let's say 50 Deutschmark, and the priest would do ha-hu, hi-ha-ha, like that. And he said, bless you, my dear son, and, they would pay for these blessings, right? It's a big business. In Buddhism, it's a big business. In Judaism, it's a big business. In Islam, it's a big business. In Hinduism, it's a big business. In Christianity, they make money. In Christianity, they have different names for it. Nowadays, they call it prosperity theology. You have these ministers preaching hours and hours, blah, 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 quoting all kinds of verses from the Bible to prove to you that God wants you to be rich. He doesn't want you to be poor. It's called prosperity theology. And, there are sincere Christians that say this is complete nonsense. It has nothing to do with our religion. But the mega churches like in Texas and even in Bellevue, they're all, the ministers are preaching prosperity theology. And people love it. They go there and they hear every week, God wants you to be rich. Right? And then they teach them, dietary suggestions and this thing and that thing, how they can become rich, all supposedly biblical. That's it.
Calvinism, they say if you are rich, then that shows God loves you.
In what religion? Calvinism, yeah. Calvinism is a type of Protestant religion started by Calvin. He was a Swiss guy, a minister. So, but you have the same thing in Hinduism, right? The whole archana business, is a business. It's a very lucrative business. You go in, you give the priest $21. He does a little archana for you. He says, what is your gotra? My gotra is, Bharadraj gotra. Okay. And then they say the mantra and they mention your gotra and so forth. And, you go away saying, oh, now my business will do better. Now, that's better than going to the bar and drinking and eating meat. Okay, let's say that also. It's better than that, right? At least they're going to to a demigod and recognizing the demigod is greater than them, and they're asking for something. That's better than going to the bar and gambling and all that stuff. Right? So it's still considered pious, but it's imperfect piety. So I'm not saying stop it. If you stop it, then they'll go to the bar. They'll never come to the temple. So at least let them come to the temple and do something, right? But the problem is the priest, because the priest should explain that, look, this is not the highest level of piety. This is on a low level. There's a high. They're called swadharmas or swakarma. This is a lower swakarma. This is a incentive-driven religion. You know, you will get prosperity. You'll get long birth, better birth. You'll get this. You'll go to Swarga and drink somagrasa. You know, so that is incentive-driven religion, right? But true Sanatan Dharma is nadanam, najanam, natsundarim, kavitam va jagdishikamai, mama janmani janmanishwari, bhavatat bhakti rahaitu kitwai. I don't want any amount of wealth. I don't want to victimize anyone for my sense gratification. I don't want any number of followers. I don't want to be a big guru, have a lot of disciples and a lot of money, gold chain and driving a BMW and blah, blah, blah. All I want is to serve you, Krishna, birth after birth, meaning I don't want moksha either. I'm not interested in moksha. I just want to serve you. I can go to hell. I can serve you in hell. I can serve you in Swarga. I can serve you on this earth. Doesn't matter. Just as long as I can serve you. So that is the position of Narad Muni. He's a liberated soul. And he's always worshipping Krishna. And he's always trying to help people. He can go to hell. But he's not in hell. He's there to help the people in hell. And he can go to the Devatas. And he can go to Vaikuntha also. He's a liberated person. But his only purpose is to glorify God. So that is the highest, let's say, level of Sanatan Dharma. You know, and that's what we're aiming for. Anything less than that is cheating people. But on the level of cheating, there's real bad cheating, there's medium cheating, and there's light cheating. So there's Archana business is sort of in between middle and light cheating, you know. But it's still cheating. You know. Okay, so we'll stop right there and continue tonight. We only scratched the surface of Govardhan Puja. This is an extremely profound meaning behind this festival. You know. And it's an exceptional incarnation of Krishna, not even mentioned in the Shastra. Govardhan incarnation of Krishna is not mentioned in the Shastra. That's why his father was confused, because he said, it's not in our Shastras. How can we do this? But Krishna is, he says, Sarva Shichaham Ridi Sanivisto, Matak Smitir Gyanam Apahanam Cha, Vidyaish Cha Sarver Aham Eva Vidya, Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chahami. Krishna is the compiler of the Vedas, he's the knower of the Vedas, and he is the goal of the Vedas. So if anyone can establish a new, let's say, principle of worship, it's Krishna. Dharmam to Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. And he did. This Govardhan is something different. It's not even mentioned in the Shastra. But Krishna established it to stop this demigod worship and to have unique worship of himself. Therefore he says in Bhagavad Gita ultimately, Sarva Dharmam Prityaja, Mamekam Saranam Braja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksishyami Masachaha. He says, O Arjuna, Sarva Dharmam Prityaja, give up all your fabricated dharmas, Mamekam Sharanam Braja, and surrender only to me. Only to me means don't even do any worship of the demigods. Why? Because the demigods are my servants. They cannot give you anything that I don't give them first. Right? Therefore, you take it directly from me, but only out of love, as an exchange of love. You give me patram pushpam phalam toyam, a leaf, water, fruit, and flower, and I'll give it back to you as prasad. And you take that prasad, you'll be liberated eternally from the cycle of birth and death. Right? So, therefore, this he started this Govardhan Puja. Govardhan is a festival of feasting, because we offer mounds and mounds, like if you were here Friday night, we offer mounds and mounds of sweets and different delicious things. And we also honor the cow, so we brought our cow here in the temple. Did you see the cow? Yeah. In the temple. You didn't come for Govardhan?
Yeah, but I don't know, somehow I was seeing it. I saw the picture, my roommate saw it.
Did you see the cow? Yeah, how was the cow? She's cute, right? Gopika. It's very sweet. She came in the temple. Huh?
I saw
Yeah, that's not the new cow. It's the cow that we brought here Friday night. Right? There's a new cow also that was born. Her name is Govardhan Leela Dasi. So, yeah, you're supposed to honor the cow because cows are very dear to Krishna, and they give the best food called milk, right? Pure milk. And then and the brahmanas recite the Vedic mantras, and the people chant Hare Krishna and circumambulate the mountain. So on Govardhan Puja, there's about 750,000, maybe 1 million pious people that go to Govardhan in Vrindavan, and they circumambulate the mountain. There's some people that take 1 to 3 months to circumambulate. They do dandavat circumambulation. They begin in one place, they offer their dandavat, they say a whole number of prayers, right? And then where their hand touched, they stand up there, and then they do another dandavat, and then they say all these prayers. It can take them, sometimes it takes 1 month, sometimes it takes 3 months. It depends how elaborate they pray. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava. You see how pious people are. And they're not doing it for their personal benefit. They're doing it only to please the Lord. So you can do Dandavat Parikram of Govardhan is 26 miles circumference, right? So you can do it in 1 day, or you could take 3 months or 1 year to do it. You know? Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. So we'll stop right there and continue tonight. Hare Krishna.
See